The year was 1865, and the land burned red beneath a sun that knew no mercy. Out here, justice rode with whoever held the fastest gun. The war had ended months ago, but for men like Elias Granger, the killing hadn't truly stopped. It had only changed shape. The plain stretched before him like an endless wound, dry and open, a place where the wind carried dust and silence in equal measure. He rode a worn gray mare, his rifle slung across his back, his mind heavy with ghosts that never learned to rest. Red Hollow came into view at the edge of the horizon, a settlement more stubborn than alive. A scattering of shacks, a saloon leaning into the wind, and a gallows tree that never seemed to grow leaves. The air reeked of horse sweat, tobacco, and the faint iron scent of blood that never quite washed away. Elias had come looking for work, or maybe just somewhere quiet enough to forget what he'd done. He stepped off his horse, boots sinking into red dirt. Men on the porch of the saloon watched him like wolves, sizing up a stranger. He ignored them, pushing through the swinging doors into a haze of whiskey and wood smoke. Inside, the piano sat silent, its keys yellowed and chipped. A few cowhands murmured at the bar, their eyes narrow and unfriendly. "Whiskey," Elias said. His voice was dry as the desert. The barkeep poured without asking questions, but the silence that followed asked plenty. There is no laughter here, no warmth, just suspicion thick enough to choke on. A wanted poster fluttered against the wall behind the bar, the corners curled from the heat. It wasn't a man's face drawn there, but a message burned into rough parchment. Asterisk half-bloods don't belong. Asterisk. Elias stared at it a moment too long. The barkeep's hand twitched near the shotgun beneath the counter. "Best not to look too close, stranger," he said. "Makes folks think you're looking for trouble." "I've already met trouble," Elias murmured, and took his drink. He meant to leave right after. But fate doesn't much care for a man's plans. The first scream came from outside, a woman's voice, sharp and desperate. Then came the sound of boots, laughter, and the crack of a whip. Elias turned before he thought better of it. In the square, a young woman was being dragged through the dirt by two men. Her hands were bound, her dark braids streaked with dust and blood. She wore a tattered deerskin dress and a beaded necklace that caught the sun like tears. The crowd gathered fast, drawn by cruelty's familiar scent. Sheriff Colt Beringer stepped forward, the law in Red Hollow and proud of it. He was a broad man, sunburned and smug, with a silver star pinned to his vest and a smile sharp as barbed wire. "Caught this one stealing from Hargreaves' store," he called out, voice loud enough for all to hear. "Says she's hungry. Says her people got run off the grazing lands. I say she's lying." "She's a half-breed," someone shouted. "Send her back to her kind." The sheriff grinned. "Oh, we'll send her somewhere." The woman said nothing. She stood tall, even with blood on her face, her eyes defiant as wildfire. Elias felt something stir in him, something he'd buried in the trenches of Tennessee, the part of him that once believed a man could still choose right from wrong. The sheriff raised his whip again. The crowd leaned in. Elias's hand moved before his mind did. His voice cut through the noise. "That's enough." The whip froze mid-air. All eyes turned to him. Colt Beringer squinted. "You got something to say, Drifter?" Elias took a slow step forward, dust rising around his boots. "You don't need to beat her to make your point." The sheriff chuckled. "You from around here?" "No." "Then you don't know how we do things." Elias's gaze didn't waver. "Looks to me like you do, I'm wrong." The laughter died. The air changed, tense and sharp. Colt's hand hovered near his revolver. "You aiming to teach me law, boy?" "I'm just saying mercy don't make a man weak." "Mercy?" The sheriff spat into the dirt. "Out here, mercy gets you killed." The crowd murmured agreement. Elias saw the fear in the woman's eyes now. Not fear of dying, but fear of being forgotten. He took another step closer. "Let her go." The sheriff's grin turned cold. "You just made yourself part of the problem, soldier." He drew his gun. The sound of the hammer clicking back echoed like thunder. For one breath, the whole world went still. Then chaos erupted. Elias moved fast, faster than he had since the war. He grabbed the sheriff's wrist, slammed it aside, the gunshot firing harmlessly into the dirt. The woman stumbled back. Someone shouted. The crowd scattered as Elias struck Colt across the jaw and ripped the knife from his belt. Another deputy lunged. Elias drove the hilt into his gut and kicked him aside. "Run," he barked. The woman hesitated, then turned and sprinted toward the edge of town, ropes still trailing from her wrists. Elias followed, bullets snapping past them like hornets. Dust rose behind as riders mounted to give chase. They tore through the desert scrub, the sun dipping low behind them. The woman gasped for breath, blood spotting her torn dress. Elias led her toward the ravine beyond the ridge. The gunfire faded, replaced by the drum of hooves echoing off canyon walls. Night fell hard and cold. They hid among the rocks, the only sound their ragged breathing and the cry of a distant coyote. Elias tore the rope from her wrists, his hands shaking. "What's your name?" he asked. "Naya," she whispered. "Why were you stealing?" Her voice broke. "For my brother. He's just a boy. They wouldn't sell us food." He nodded. No words came. He understood too well what desperation could make a person do. For a while, silence stretched between them, heavy but alive. She looked at him, eyes reflecting the small fire he'd built. "You shouldn't have helped me," she said softly. "They'll come for you now." "Let 'em," he muttered. "I've had worse company." She smiled faintly, and for a fleeting moment it almost felt like peace. But peace doesn't last long in Red Hollow. The riders found them before dawn, their torches cutting through the dark. Elias fought. God, he fought, but there were too many. A rifle but cracked against the skull, and the world spun away into black. When he woke, his hands were bound, and the sun was climbing once more. They had dragged him back to town, the sheriff waiting at the gallows tree, with a new sign nailed to its trunk, * half-bloods don't belong. * Naya was tied beneath it, her feet barely touching the ground, her face pale. Any last words? She stared past him, toward the horizon. "The land remembers," she said quietly. Colt yanked the rope. Elias shouted, voice raw, but it was no use. The world blurred with dust and sunlight and grief. When it was done, the sheriff cut him loose. "Get out of Red Hollow," he said. "Don't come back." Elias climbed onto his horse, eyes hollow. He didn't look back, but he didn't need to. He could still hear the rope creak in the wind behind him, still see the sign swaying gently above the sand. He rode on until the town was a smear against the dawn, the sound of the desert wind whispering through the cottonwood branches. He rode from Red Hollow that day, but left his soul hanging on that tree. The desert did not forgive, and it did not forget. Elias Granger rode until the world bled into heat and haze, his throat raw with dust and shame. The wind carried the memory of the rope, the faint groan of wood beneath weight, the whisper of a name, * Naya Star. Her face haunted every flicker of shadow. Her voice lingered like a ghost that refused to fade. He rode without aim, only away, until the gray mare stumbled beneath him, and he fell into the sand, the horizon blurring into nothing but red. When he woke, the sun was gone, replaced by a wash of starlight and the faint crackle of fire. A shape sat nearby, carved in silhouette against the night, a man old as the mountains, wrapped in a worn blanket patterned with tribal symbols. His eyes gleamed amber in the firelight, sharp and knowing. "You breathe still," the old man said. "That means the desert hasn't finished with you." Elias tried to sit, pain biting through his ribs. "Who are you?" The man placed a wooden bowl in his hands, steam rising from the water inside. "Tamik," he said, "healer of what the land can fix. The rest is up to you." Elias drank greedily, the water tasting of clay and smoke. He looked around. A small camp rested against the canyon wall, 2 ponies tied near a mesquite tree, bundles of herbs hung to dry, and a single teepee painted with symbols that seemed to move when the fire danced. "Why'd you help me?" Elias asked, his voice rough. Tamik poked at the fire with a stick. "Because even a wounded coyote deserves a chance to crawl home. You were near dead when I found you." "I didn't ask for saving." "Men rarely do," Tamik said, "but you carry a burden. The land feels it." Elias looked away. It's not the land that weighs on me. Tamak studied him in silence, as if reading the history written in his scars. You've seen too much war, he said. You stink of blood that isn't yours. Elias's jaw tightened. I fought for the Union. Then you fought for men who believed killing could make them clean, Tamak said quietly. Different flag, same lie. The fire cracked. Elias stared into it until his vision blurred. The smell of smoke mingled with the memory of rope. There was a woman, he said. She didn't deserve what they did. Tamak's eyes narrowed. Her name. Naya. The old man went still. The flames reflected in his eyes, hard as flint. Say it again. Elias hesitated. Naya. She was accused of stealing. I tried to stop them. Tamak rose slowly, his hands trembling, though not from age. She was my daughter. The world seemed to tilt. Elias felt the words hit, like a bullet to the chest. Your daughter? She went to trade for food, Tamak said, voice low and cracked with grief. Her brother was sick. She never came back. He looked down at Elias, his face unreadable. And now I find the man who watched her hang, drinking my fire and breathing my air. Elias's heart pounded. I didn't watch, he said, voice hoarse. I tried to save her. They made me watch when I failed. Tamak's expression didn't soften. He turned away, staring toward the dark line of the desert. You save her too late. Compassion in this land is a noose waiting for a neck. Elias bowed his head, shame burning through him. I didn't come here to ask forgiveness. Good, Tamak said, because there's none to give. For a long while, only the fire spoke between them, crackling like old bones. Finally, Tamak sighed and sat again. You can leave at dawn, or you can stay and help me protect what little remains of my people. The sheriff sends men to burn what's left of our camps. He says it's justice. Elias looked up. Justice, he repeated bitterly. That word doesn't mean much anymore. Then, make it mean something, Tamak said. If you have any piece of her left in you, use it. Elias didn't sleep that night. He sat by the dying fire, staring at the stars until dawn painted the canyon gold. He remembered her last words. Asterisk, the land remembers. Asterisk, maybe that was true. Maybe the land waited for someone to answer. When morning came, he found Tamak by the riverbank, skinning a rabbit. If I stay, Elias said, what do you need me to do? The old man didn't look up. There's a camp 2 days south. Families hiding from a sheriff's men. They'll be found soon unless we move them. I'll help. Tamak handed him a knife. Then you're not helping me. You're helping her. They rode through the canyons under a punishing sun. The air shimmered like glass, every shadow hiding thirst and danger. They moved by instinct, following faint trails marked by broken stones and bleached bones. Each mile stripped away another layer of Elias's old self. The soldier, the drifter, the man who ran. What remained was quieter, harder, like the desert itself. By the second night, they reached a narrow valley. Smoke curled from small fires below. A hidden camp of women, children, and elders, their faces wary but calm. When Elias dismounted, eyes turned toward him, some in fear, some in disbelief. He felt their judgment like heat against the skin. A young boy ran up to Tamak, clutching his leg. Grandfather, you came back. Tamak smiled faintly, resting a hand on the child's hair. Then he looked at Elias. This is Naya's brother. The boy's eyes were wide, untrusting. Elias felt something twist inside him, a grief too deep for words. She wanted to feed you, he said softly. The boy only stared, then turned away. That night, Elias helped gather wood and tend fires. He listened to the songs they sang, soft, mournful, like prayers carried on wind. Tamak spoke quietly of the old ways of balance between man and land, and how greed had poisoned it. You can't save this place, Elias said. They'll just keep coming. Maybe, Tamak replied, but saving isn't always the point. Sometimes the fight itself is what keeps us alive. Elias understood. For the first time in months, he felt a purpose that wasn't born of regret. A storm rolled in from the west that night, thunder rumbling like cannon fire. Elias stood at the mouth of the canyon, rain washing the dust from his skin. Lightning cracked over the horizon, illuminating the valley in bursts of silver and shadow. He closed his eyes, and in the thunder's roar, he heard her voice again, clear, strong, forgiving. Then save the ones who can still be saved. He opened his eyes. The storm howled through the desert, bending the trees and blurring the stars, but his resolve stood firm. He saddled his horse, tightened the cinch, and looked once more toward the endless plains. Tamik watched from the firelight, saying nothing. He didn't need to. Both men understood the unspoken truth that redemption was a road without end, and mercy, once chosen, could never be taken back. Elias rode into the storm, rain stinging his face, thunder chasing him like a memory. The desert stretched ahead, vast and cruel, but for the first time he didn't fear it. He rode, not as a man running from ghosts, but as one following them home. And somewhere between the lightning and the wind, he whispered her name, letting it carry across the wild. If compassion was a crime, then he would be its most wanted man. The night had settled thick and heavy over the plains, swallowing the horizon in a cold hush. Only the creak of saddle leather and the distant call of a lone coyote broke the silence. Elias rode ahead, lantern swinging from his hand, the light catching on his jawline, set hard as stone. Beside him, Clara's face was pale in the half-glow, her breath rising in faint clouds. Behind them, the wind carried faint whispers, hoofbeats closing in. "They've found us," Elias said, quietly, reining his horse to a halt. His tone was calm, but his eyes told another story. Clara tightened her grip on the reins. "How many?" "Too many to count, and not enough to scare me," he muttered, checking the revolver on his hip. "You ride east toward the ravine. I'll draw them off." She shook her head sharply. "No, not again. Every time you stay behind, I lose someone I care about." He turned to her then, the firelight flickering between them. "And every time you hesitate, someone innocent dies. Go, Clara. Don't let what we've done mean nothing." Her throat constricted with words she couldn't say. Instead, she spurred her horse forward, disappearing into the shadows of the broken land. Elias watched her go, then turned toward the darkness behind. The hoofbeats were louder now. He cocked his revolver, thumbed the hammer back, and whispered into the wind, "Come and claim your justice." The first rider appeared, a flash of metal, the glint of a rifle barrel. Elias fired once, twice. A scream split the night. More shadows fanned out, closing around him like wolves. He ducked behind a boulder, his heart pounding in rhythm with the gunfire. Each shot was a prayer, each echo a curse. By the time the shooting stopped, smoke hung over the clearing like a shroud. Elias staggered to his feet, bleeding from a wound in his shoulder. His horse had fled. He pressed a hand against the wound and looked toward the eastern ridge. He had a reacher. Miles away, Clara reached the ravine just as dawn began to creep across the sky. The river below churned white and wild. She tied the horse to a tree, scanning the ridge behind her. No sign of Elias. No sign of the men either. Only the hush of the wilderness, vast, merciless, and empty. Then came the shot. One, then another, echoing across the canyon. Her heart dropped. She knew that sound. Knew it too well. Without thinking, she ran back toward the open plain. She found him near a dry creek bed, half collapsed, dirt-soaked with blood. He was breathing hard but alive. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "Didn't I tell you to go?" "You did," she said, kneeling beside him. "But I've never been good at following orders." He tried to laugh, but winced instead. "That makes two of us." They stayed there in the silence, listening to the distant rumble of hooves. The posse was still coming. They had minutes, maybe less. "What they're doing isn't justice," she said, voice trembling. "It's vengeance." He met her gaze. "Out here, people don't know the difference anymore. Then we'll remind them." Elias looked toward the rising sun, gold spilling across the horizon. "You still believe that's possible?" She nodded, gripping his hand. "Someone has to." The sound of the posse grew louder, the ring of bridles, the crunch of gravel. Clara stood, loading her rifle with practiced calm. Elias struggled to his knees beside her, raising his revolver. They took position by the creek bed, side by side, two silhouettes against the dawn. The first riders appeared through the dust, faces hard, guns already drawn. Sheriff Dwyer led them, eyes cold, mouth tight. "You think you can hide behind mercy, boy?" he shouted. "You killed one of mine. You sheltered savages. There ain't no forgiveness for that." Elias's voice was steady. "You talk about law, Dwyer, but you forgot what it's for. The law protects the living, it doesn't feed the dead." The sheriff sneered. "You think the law's about kindness? You've been out here too long." Maybe Elias said, "But I've seen enough killing to know compassion's the only thing worth dying for." The standoff hung in the air, every breath stretched thin as a wire. Then came the first shot. Dwyer's bullet grazed Elias's arm, and Clara returned fire. Chaos erupted. Gunfire crackled, horses reared, dust exploded into the air. Elias moved with grim precision, every shot measured, every motion a testament to years of regret. Clara covered him, her face set with fierce resolve. When the smoke cleared, half the posse lay still. Dwyer stood swaying, pistol aimed but hands trembling. "You can't win, Elias. Even if you kill me, the world will still call you a criminal." Elias took a step forward, blood running down his arm. "Then let the world say what it wants. I'll answer to something higher." Dwyer's gun wavered. His eyes flickered, not with fear but confusion. Elias didn't raise his weapon. He just stood there, battered and unbroken. "You want to hang me?" Elias said softly. "Fine, but you'll have to tell them you shot first." The sheriff hesitated, then holstered his pistol. "You're a fool, McGraw." Maybe Elias said, "But I'm a free one." Dwyer mounted his horse, glared at them both, and rode off without another word. The few men left followed, their silhouettes fading into the rising sun. Clara knelt beside Elias, tears mixing with the dust on her cheeks. "You could have killed him." "I know." He looked toward the horizon. "But then I'd be no better." The sun climbed higher, burning away the last traces of smoke. For the first time in years, Elias felt the weight in his chest ease. The air smelled of dust and promise. They rode east later that morning, leaving behind the place where vengeance had lost its voice. As the plains stretched out before them, Clara glanced back once more. "What happens now?" Elias didn't answer right away. He looked ahead, to the long road cutting through the wilderness to the endless unknown. "Now," he said at last, "we see if compassion can still survive in a land without justice." They rode on in silence, the world around them vast and unyielding, but for the first time, it felt like something worth fighting for. And as the wind carried their silhouettes into the blaze of morning, a narrator's voice lingered, quiet yet certain. Maybe that's what the frontier was all along, a test of mercy in a world that forgot how to give it. If this story stirred something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Because sometimes the stories we remember are the ones that remind us what being human truly costs.